Yo, what's up, guys? Today I want to do a video I've done before, but in a bit more of a detailed manner, and it's kind of gonna be like a beginner's guide. And so, it's gonna cover mostly like basic intro level stuff. However, I may discuss things I'm not even entirely sure that are useful to more advanced players. And by when I say beginner's guide, I don't necessarily mean for brand new players. However, it will help brand new players. I kind of mean for anyone who's just like getting into the game. Like even if you've got 10, 20 hours in it and you're still not entirely sure the best way to like play the game to make money, etc., all that stuff. I'm just kind of going to be covering that. And to start off with, one thing I want to talk about is selecting the class you want to play. Generally speaking, my recommendation will always be play whatever you enjoy the most. Like obviously, like some of these classes are better than others. However, if you're not having fun on the class, what's the point, you know? And with that being said, I'm kind of gonna go over the classes like really quick and just kind of give something that they're very good at and when you should play them and why if like your play style that I would recommend making you play them. Alright, to start off with, you have your frontliners, which are fighter and barbarian generally. Fighter is supposed to be more of a jack of all trades. However, it's not necessarily true. Don't listen to this description. It's kind of a lie. Fighter's playstyle is generally just like heavy tank frontline. They do have a secondary one, which is a more damaging playstyle where you wear lighter leather armor and you dual wield weapons and you get higher damage output through that. However, it's not the greatest, but it is rather enjoyable. So your two options for fighter are generally that lighter armor, dual wield, damaging build, or your very heavy armor, tanky, slow, like plate build. Those are really the two for fighter. Barbarian, much more one-sided. Generally speaking, barbarians they're gonna stack a lot of strength, stack a lot of HP. They're gonna be a big. They're not gonna have the same amount of resistances. However, they're very high HP pool. They'll effectively be a meat shield. And you have very strong weapons like a war maul, bardiche, felling axe, double axe. They'll have very high base damage, so you're able to put out very, very high damage. Your one-handed options aren't the best. However, you do have some viable ones, that being like a Viking sword, for example, that are pretty good. Barbarians very good at chasing people down. They have high magic resistance, high HP pool. So if you like just like running at people and being able to trade with them, Barbarian's generally a class for you. Now we get to our damage characters, which is Rogue, Ranger, and Warlock. Rogue is not in the best spot right now. Honestly, I mean, there isn't much to this class that you can't imagine yourself. It's a very, sneaky class. You go invis, you backstab people, you can lockpick chests. It's just generally a very generic rogue class for any game. You have very low base starting damage. However, you do have the highest survivability out of any class. One downside to Rogue, though, is whenever you start, Rogue is very annoying to start with because Rogue is a class that relies pretty heavily on their perks to get their survivability online. For example, the skills they start with, one of them is Stealth. However, you need a perk to make it so you can walk in Stealth without it being broken. So until you get that, then your Stealth isn't really good. It's pretty bad, to be honest. However, when you get that, it's like a very, very noticeable change, and that continues all the way up until you unlock your last perk. So Rogue is very much a character that plays around their perks. Then we have Ranger, just your generic archer class. You have a bow with range, so it's very good for clearing PvE. If you want to go for a class that's just good for PvE because you're struggling with it, Ranger's generally going to be your best PvE class. For PvP, they're not the greatest early because they do have very, very low damage. However, you have traps you can put up, and if you catch an enemy in a trap, it's very, very easy to kill them because they're locked in place for a long time. Hard to miss your shots when they're standing still. So, not a bad class. Wizard is one of the slowest starting classes, but also one of the highest finishing classes when you get gear. You have a bunch of different spells you could choose from that work for a lot of different situations. One downside to Wizard, though, is when you're starting, your spells do have limited uses, so you have to use meditation to restore them. So Wizard does have a lot of downtime. There's going to be a lot of time where you're just sitting down, regenerating your spells, and you don't have the best PvE because most of your spells aren't that good for PvE. They're mostly PvP, so Wizard is very, very slow when it comes to PvE. However, Wizard's more of a very, very PvP dominating class. So if you were looking to just play PvE or PvP very heavily, then Wizard is a class that you can look forward later in the game. However, Wizard does have a very, very weak starting point and very, very weak PvE. That is, something to note. Then on to Warlock, the last damage class. Warlock is another one of the best PvE classes. It definitely could test Ranger. Warlock doesn't require much. If you get a slight bit of magical healing, being literally one or two, this class pretty much becomes immortal. In terms of PvE, you can dot things with your curses, and you'll start healing up a ton just off of very, very little. Then when you get some knowledge online, you unlock more spell slots. You get access to like your bigger spells, just like Summon Hydra, which makes your PvE even easier. And your PvP is pretty good. This is probably the best solo character in the game if you're only playing solo. I would highly recommend trying out Warlock if it's to your playstyle and you enjoy it. Warlock is the de facto best solo class. You have the best healing. You have really good survivability with your Phantom Eyes, which makes it so you can't take physical damage for 6 seconds. The only downside to Warlock really is if you run into wizards. However, Warlock does have a lot of base magic resistance off of the gear they wear, so it's not too hard to deal with. Warlock is a very, very strong class. Once again, though, it is a spellcaster, so it does have a relatively slow start. However, Warlocks don't have limited spell usages. Instead, their spell usages take their HP to cast. So in theory, you have unlimited spell usages for as long as you have HP. Alright, now onto the support classes. We have Cleric and Bard. First off of Cleric. Cleric is the healing class of the game. They have mostly healing spells, but they do have some support ones such as shields or stat buffs for their teammates. Then they have certain offensive spells like Holy Strike and Earthquake. Holy Strike is you charge it and then you do an AoE burst of light in a targeter. You know, it explodes, does damage, can damage your allies, can damage enemies. Then you have Earthquake. Earthquake is, you know, you charge it up and then an area you choose, you hold it and it's a channel, and anyone who walks over that area will be slowed and take damage per step. It's a very, very good support class. One of, if not the best support classes in the game right now. The only other one being Bard, and Cleric's probably better. This is the only class that gives you reliable healing. Cleric is basically a good class in every single situation. And if you're just looking to purely support your team and you enjoy healing, Cleric's the class for you. Cleric also has much more excuse me. Cleric also has much more offensive capability than Bard, because they have higher damage off the mace. Bard is pretty good offensively. However, when you're first learning the class, Bard is much harder to get into. And in terms of solo play, once again, if you're playing solo, Cleric's a very good class to play solo because they have all of their spells they can use. You know, they can use it for themselves, and they have access to very good skills like Smite, which gives you extra magic damage on your weapon that makes them very, very strong in a 1v1 fight. Now, Bard. Bard is one of the hardest classes to pick up just because you have to learn which songs you should be playing and, like, you know, the order to play them. You have to keep buffs up on your team, keep buffs up on yourself, and then you have to swap between buffing, swap between fighting. It's a difficult playstyle to pick up, but however, if you do commit to it and you get good at it, it is very, very rewarding. You know, you know the exact buffs you need to use. This is Bard, in my mind, plays very much like an MMO character or MMO. Or like you think if you've ever played like World of Warcraft or something, you know, you have a bunch of different spells and abilities you have to use. You have them all in certain binds. You know, you get a proper rotation going for like DPS or whatever you're doing. Bard very much plays like that. You can get up to like 10 songs you can play. You swap between them. You keep your buffs up. You buff yourself in the middle of a fight. You debuff the enemies. You do whatever you need to do. Bard is very much another jack of all trades support character. You kind of provide a lot of different things. You have healing. You have spell regeneration. You have a lockpick song. Bard provides a lot, and Bard is never a bad addition to the team. It is always very, very good to play. Okay, and with that being said, that covers our classes for now. Okay, so on to the next thing that I want to talk about. And that is just generally how you're going to level and make money. So this game, so I'm sure a lot of you are watching this video. If you are new to the game or relatively new or whatever it may be, you understand that Dark and Darker is a very, very brutal and unforgiving game. When you for example, let's say let's say look at Bourbon. I made this class yesterday just for a screenshot of the class. Let's say I'm gonna go in on this barbarian, right? I have 0 gold. I have 0 access to healing items. You know, I have very, very bad armor. My stats are good, but I have very, very bad armor. No healing. Pretty much no utility at all. I'm just pure damage, weak gray weapon, and that's it. So you get hit by a single mob, and that's a bunch of HP that you're not going to get back. Sure, you can rest. However, it does take a very, very long time to get that HP back, even when resting. So it's still very, very slow. And, I'm gonna be honest. I've had a lot of people ask me like, hey, like like what's like the trick to starting out? Like it feels so hard. Like I feel like I'm dying all the time. Like I'm not extracting. And honestly, that's just how this game is. Like this game, it's very brutal. It's very unforgiving. And when you start off, like you're probably gonna die a lot. That's just how it is. That's how it was for me. I mean, I'm one of the best players in this game now. But whenever I first started, trust me, I was dying to mobs all the time. I remember first starting off with my friends, and my friend he died to like the first skeleton he ran into like 4 games in a row. I'm sure not everyone's like that, but there are definitely some people out there that are they're still struggling with every single mob they run into, and like that's okay. So the number one thing you want to do is when you start the game and you start running into mobs, try to pay attention to the move sets they do. Learn how to properly bait out their attacks and space them. One thing you can do with most mobs that aren't ranged, just melee, just walk into melee range with them, trigger their attack, and immediately back up. And whenever they swing, generally, you can get a swing in. There are some exceptions. If you play Goblin Caves and you notice the Goblin Axemen, sometimes they will do a follow-up attack, and you just have to pay attention. You have to know when that's going to come, because if you look for what they're going to do, or if you're just careful of the follow-up attack, generally you can dodge it. And the thing is, the more you know these attack patterns, the more you dodge, the less HP you're going to be losing per round. And, that's really important for when you have no meds. However, let's say, it gets later on when you have meds. Every attack you dodge or every attack you don't dodge, that's more healing you have to spend for the HP you lost. And, if you're not taking any damage, you don't have to spend any HP, which directly correlates to you're not losing any gold to buy more meds. For example, if you go into a run with 3 bandages and 3 health pots, and you end up losing all of those, when you get out, that's what's the price for? Like, I'm not even sure the price for default. That's what it's 18 gold for 3 potions here, and then 15 here. That's a little over 30 gold that that you have to spend to go back in. If you only made 50 gold, that's only 20 gold profit you made because you had to spend 30 of your gold, or 33 to be exact, 33 of your gold to buy meds. However, if you didn't have to spend any of those, you only have to spend some, that's much more profit you're going to make. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but that money adds up when you first start. So, just be very careful of the way you're playing the game at the start. It is very rough, I won't deny it. However, it is very rewarding once you learn it and you adapt to it. Another thing is, so it just really, if you want to play solo, or you want to play duo, or you want to play trios, or whatever you want to do, obviously, like, you choose your map for that. However, if you're just starting out, I do recommend going in Goblin Caves. If you're playing with friends, it's obviously, I play threes. And this is just for my personal thing. It's like, if you just want to learn the game, Goblin Caves is very, very easy to do it. There aren't many areas in Goblin Caves that are really bad. Crypts, however, there are plenty of areas that if you mess up, there's a ton of mobs that'll aggro you. You could die very easily. You run into other teams of 3. It's a lot harder to realize what you're doing wrong. Whereas in Goblin Caves, it's 1v1, so if you lose a fight with one person, for example, it's a lot easier to be like, okay, what did I do wrong there? What could I do better? But if you lose a fight in a 3v3 setting, you have to look at, like, did I do something wrong? My teammates do something wrong? Our positioning was it bad? Like, there's a lot of different things to consider. So I do recommend going in Goblin Caves to start with. One downside is the Goblin Caves does have generally different mobs than you'll run into in, like, crypts or ruins. There's much less skeletons in Goblin Caves. It's mostly, obviously, just goblins. So learning the attack patterns doesn't exactly carry over. However, it does help a bit. And then another thing that's very, very good, you don't have to learn the entire map, right? That's not something. I don't know all the maps. I don't know most of the maps for a lot of the areas. However, one thing you do want to try to remember is, let's say you run into an area that's very high loot. If you've played Goblin Caves, I'll go back to the example I'm talking about. There is one particular area that has like a bunch of shelves. There's a goblin mage and like a goblin archer and I think a goblin like melee guy. But if you kill those on those shelves, there's a ton of loot. Areas like that, you want to try to remember where they are so you can go back there. Because if you start remembering these high value areas, you could start making more money because you could start trying to move towards there. You're not just running around aimlessly. This is the same thing, for example, if you're killing the elite enemies like the centipedes or wraiths or skeleton champions or whatever it may be. If you remember where these enemies are, you can go to them more often, and they have higher rarity loot. It works the exact same way for higher tier chests like Lion's Head or Golden Chests. If you're moving around the map with these chests in mind, it is much, much easier for you to start getting better loot, start getting more XP faster, because you get better XP the better the stronger the enemies you kill, and you're leveling up faster, you're getting access to your perks faster, and you're making more money. One other thing is right now it is super easy to get really good gear because of this right here, the jack-o'-lantern shop. You know, you get candy and then you can go here and you can buy great purples. One recommendation I have is, like, let's say, you know, you start getting money and you're like, okay, what do I spend it on? I don't know what I want. You don't have to spend it on anything. You shouldn't feel the need to spend it right away for anything. What you can do is literally just save it up or buy candy and then just wait until you have a really good purple item here that you want to buy. Like, let's say, for example, I want to buy these gloves. I mean, I don't, but let's say I want to buy these. That's 22 candy. That's about 220 gold. Imagine if these are really good rolled, because the prices don't change depending on how good the gear is. So this could be perfect rolls for 22 gold. That's about, or 22 candy. That's about 220 gold right now. So if I had 220 gold, I could go buy the candy right now, buy this, and you can slowly build a kit together. You could try to go in with like green gear or whatever you may do, and then, you know, build up your economy, buy the better gear, and whenever you feel comfortable, start running that. One thing that I mean, obviously, I think this isn't going to help you guys in any way. I just do want to discuss it. Is don't feel bad about having gear fear. And obviously, if you don't know what the term gear fear means, it's just literally just being afraid of losing your good gear. I'm going to be honest with you. If you've never played a looter game like this, where, you know, you have to split something online or whatever it may be, like, you're going to lose gear. That's just going to happen. It just comes with the territory of playing these types of games. And there's no real way to get over it other than to just play the game and lose that gear. Because once you lose it 1, 2, 3 times, you realize, like, oh, I've lost it before. Like, I can get it again. Because if you got it one time, you can get it again. No matter how good it is, you got it before, so that you can get it again, or you can get even better. That just happens. So just try not to have that really bad gear fear about the game. So, you know, like I said, if you do, that's fine. I did for a very long time too. However, like I said, when you start taking in that better gear, the better gear you go in with, the better chances you have of getting out with even better gear. Because if you go into the grays every single run because you're scared of taking your blues, then when you run into other people in blues, you're going to be at a much bigger disadvantage. However, if you went in with the same level of gear, you're on a much better point to actually fight them and get their stuff. And that's the best thing to note is your gear doesn't do anything if it's sitting in your stash. Now, I'm not saying the second you get a purple to go in with it, right? Like, obviously, if you get a really good piece of gear and you want to build a kit to use it, that's fine. Like, that's not being afraid of losing it. That's just being smart. Plenty of times, I'll get a really good piece of gear, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to save this for when I build a really good kit to run it with. Like, let's say, for example, I get a really good weapon, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to, like, you know, I'm going to build a kit for this. Or just a really good piece. Like, for example, this pendant. This pendant is insane. I got this pendant over a week ago, and I just started using it like a day or two ago because I just built a kit that I wanted to use with it. So I wasn't going to run this in just like some green gear, right? Obviously, because this is much better. It's not doing it justice. I'm not getting the value out of it if I run this in worse gear. Something else is, for example, like, let's say you get this piece of gear, and you're like, that's really good. However, I'm not going to use it, or I'm not going to use it anytime soon. Don't feel bad about selling it. Because, like, this pendant alone, let's say I sold it. I could sell it for, like, I could probably sell this for a key, maybe 2. It's a very good thing. It's worth a ton of money. If you don't know, that when people say keys, they mean golden keys, which these are right here. And they're just another way of storing currency. This is something, it inherently has no value, but the community has given it currency. These things are worth around 2,500 gold. And so if you get one, that's great. You can sell it. However, like I'm saying, if you get like one really good piece of gear like this, don't feel bad about selling it. Don't feel pressured to sit on it and eventually lose it. Because the thing is, like, let's say I sold this for 2,500 gold. Like, I can do a lot with that 2,500 gold. Especially if you're buying like green gear and stuff. 2,500 gold can build you 2, 3, maybe even 4 or 5 sets if you find some really good deals. And that is 4 or 5 full sets of gear that you can use for the price of a single piece of gear. And like even if they're worse, like even if you're trading this one really crazy pendant, for example, for 4 or 5 sets of good green gear, like most people, you're gonna get that value out of. You're gonna have more fun with those 5 pieces, or that's 5 sets of green gear than you will with this one amulet that's sitting in your stash because you're afraid of using it because you don't have gear good enough to run it yet. I've done that before. I've had gear where I'm like, this is really good, but I'm not going to use this anytime soon because I don't have good enough gear for it, so I'm just going to sell it. Even if it was something I could use, it wasn't worth it for me to hold on to it when I could sell it at in that moment and get gear that I could run at that time, because that was just more advantageous to me. All right. Trying to think if there's anything else that I should mention that's really good for beginners. I guess stats is one thing I can prioritize. So I mean stats. Okay, so obviously when you start, there are a lot of stats. There's a lot of confusing things in here. Excuse me. My nose is kind of stopped up. I sound weird. There's a lot of stats in this game, and they can be kind of scary. Like, like you have like all types of rolls on gear, like projectile reduction, armor rating plus all. And it's hard to tell, like, what's good, right? Like, what do I need for my class? And what I'm going to try to do, like, just really quick, I'll give you, like, a generic guide for stats for each class that you could prioritize. Fighter, you're going to want to look for strength, agility, plus all attributes, armor rating, and physical damage reduction. Those are your best those are your best stat rolls for this class. All right. Barbarian, strength, agility, once again, armor rating, once again, is good. Then you can look for like move speed, action speed, flat HP rolls. There's a lot of things. Pretty much just anything that's tanky and damage. That's front lines all work the same way. And then damage dealer, physical damage dealers like Rogue and Ranger, they also use the exact same stats. Your choices that you want to prioritize are strength, all attributes, weapon damage, and then it's either additional physical damage or true physical damage. Those are all good. Weapon damage is your best offensive damage stat. It gives you scaling damage. Roughly, each 1 point of weapon damage is equivalent to about 2 actual damage that you do. So if 1 additional physical damage is 1 damage, 1 weapon damage would be 2 damage. So, just very, very loose guide. If you are really curious about the stats, you can look up another guide. There are plenty of them on YouTube. You can look up one where people go much more in depth than I do. Then for wizard, you want things like knowledge, will, additional magic damage, true magic damage, magical power, all very, very good stats. Those are probably your best. Knowledge gives you more spell memory, which lets you use more spells, and it increases your spell casting speed, which is actually very important. Will increases the effectiveness of your spells, so the damage of them for wizard. Cleric, same as wizard, will and knowledge are very important. Cleric really needs spellcasting speed. They don't need the spell memory as much. They only need a very small amount. But the spellcasting speed is very, very nice because some of their spellcasts are very, very long. Will increases the amount that you heal. And then you're going to want to look for like things like strength and agility, while also looking for plus all attributes. Plus all attributes right now is one of the best stats in the game. And I'm going to say this in anticipation of it being nerfed. When it is nerfed down because currently you can roll +2 on big pieces. When it is nerfed down to +1 all, it will still be a good stat. However, it will not be the main stat you prioritize. It will just be a nice addition on gear that already has good stats. And then on to Bard. Bard uses a lot of stats. Bard can use pretty much every stat. So you need knowledge to get more songs that you could play. Agility increases the speed at which you play songs. And, that you do pretty much anything else, like attack, move, and all that. Strength gives you more HP and more damage. Will increases the scaling of certain songs. And then resourcefulness increases, like, your interaction speed. And it increases your persuasion, which is how long your buffs last on people. So, that is, Bard uses pretty much every stat. The main ones you want to prioritize are agility and knowledge to a certain extent. Once you get enough knowledge to run all the songs you want, then you want to go agility, strength, and resourcefulness. And then Warlock. Warlock uses magical healing as their #1 stat because it makes your spells heal you for much, much more. Once you get around 5 to 6 magical healing, you'll notice a ginormous difference. Even 1 or 2 is a very, very big difference from base. However, when you get up to like 5 or 6, you can pretty much just full heal off a single target. Then you want to prioritize like knowledge, will, just the exact same as the other spellcasters. Strength is very good on their Warlock because you cast your spells with HP. And, you want to be a bit tankier because you can go into melee as well. But other than that, that pretty much sums up the stats you want to use. I'm not going to put this up on, text or anything. So if you want to hear me say it again, just rewind the video. I'm too lazy to do that. But other than that, I'm not gonna do like go in game show you like a walkthrough of like what to do. I will like tell you guys the best things to do whenever you're starting out. Like I said, learning mob attack patterns is very good. Very much recommend it. Once you stop taking a ton of damage from mobs, you'll be more able to fight with people in PvP. Then I'm not. There's not a whole lot of tips I can give you for that. That's the best. That's kind of just like a trial and error thing. You fight them. You see what feels good. You see what doesn't. Depending on the class you play, there are some classes you're strong against, some classes you're weak against. However, one tip I can give is whenever you're starting out, pretty much loot everything. One thing though, it's a common mistake a lot of people make is grabbing gear that you're not gonna use that you can't sell. So pretty much anything like green, like or under, like blue gear, you can maybe sell. It's not as easy in the current market, but generally you can. However, don't pick up like white or gray gear that you can't use. It takes up a ton of slots. It sells for like nothing to the vendor. It's not worth it. So if you kill somebody, what you want to do is you want to look at their inventory, take all their valuables. The number one thing to look for is candy corn. If you see that, always take it. That is the most value you're going to get, especially in like a low roller setting. That is always good because each candy is worth around 10 to 15 gold. And you can find it a lot. So if you kill somebody and they have like 10 candy in their inventory, that's between 100 and 150 gold right there. And you can use it for the candy shop. It's amazing. All right, so the main thing you want to do is try to take all the valuables you can. So like like bangles, gold, silver coins, diamonds, any of that stuff. Take all of that. You don't want to fill your inventory up with, like I told you, like armor, weapons that you're not going to use. Anything that you're going to use, that's fine to take. But if it's not something you can use or not something you have intentions on using, usually not worth it unless you're going to sell it. And it's kind of hard to sell right now. And you can't sell it to your level 15 on the market anyway, so it's not really worth it. But other than that, I don't think there's anything I'm forgetting. I could be. I probably am. I always end up forgetting something in these videos, and I remember them later when I've already uploaded the video. Usually when someone comments it. But yeah, I think that just about sums it up for now. Uh, I guess my closing thoughts are just, it's a hard game to get into, but whenever you start playing it and you enjoy it, it's very rewarding. I highly recommend sticking with it. It's, like I said, it is hard to get into, but once you like start getting the hang of it, you pick it up very fast, and it's a very rewarding experience and it's a very fun game. But with that being said, if you have any questions you'd feel like to ask, feel free to leave them down below. And if not, then if you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until next time, peace.